example, if I have a software idea, for me to find someone and get it executed will be much tougher than a person like you who can literally code it over a period of 1 week. So I think you are very amazingly placed. The third shift after shifting on from asset to knowledge base is the government's focus on the local industries. If you see now, there have been so many policies made around all big projects up to say 200 to 500 crores to be given particularly to local companies. And therefore, I think this will really boost the domestic sector to a great extent because the government is now prioritizing companies that are based locally. That's amazing. In terms of incentives and rebates also, you can expect an easier framework to do business now going forward. Because in terms of employment generation, the government has done very poorly, I would say, and it's already exhausted. The biggest employers, maybe the railways or the army, they're already offering voluntary retirement packages. And therefore, you need to understand that the youth that we count as the strongest potential can really go against us if we don't take this properly. And the best way to address this problem, in my opinion, is entrepreneurship, where most of us can create jobs for even 5, 10, 20 people. Even then, it's more than enough. So I think this vocal for local policy is going to benefit all of us if you're planning to join an Indian company or start an Indian company. The fourth shift that I see now, which is again very beneficial to all of us, is how cheap and how easily available data is in India. So my friends who work in Dubai or work out of any other developed economy, they pay lakhs towards a good, internet connection, so to speak. But for us, very good internet connection, fast and reliable, is available at, I would say, dirt cheap prices. And we need to utilize this to create companies which are massive, digital focused and internet focused companies. And again, another statistic that blows my mind is more than 70% of our country is really not yet internet penetrated. So you can imagine when more people come, the effect it will have on the economy as a whole. So that is why you will see a lot of foreign investment coming from America, China, from most of these countries is really helping us. Just to pause there for a second, is the voice unclear?
It's a bit not clear, sir, actually.
Surprising, I just did a call before this one and it was all good.
You're not clear, sir. You're able to, you're good, audible, and clear.
Sorry?
You're audible, sir. You're audible clearly.
Okay. So like I said, data is amazingly cheap. So we need to make use of that. And therefore, the heavy lifting in our industry is completely done now. We just need to come, plug and play, start and swipe and hit sixes. And the fifth point I really need to focus on is the lean models that we will be using going forward. A lean model is a model where there is focus more on efficiencies. The focus is more on small teams. The focus is reducing capital expenditure. The focus is reducing fixed costs. And the focus is having a super high return on output and return on investment, which were not the parameters, earlier, but now these are the parameters. So with this background, now coming into some skills that especially I know that many of you are students. So in terms of skills, what skills you need to focus on? Now I'm in a unique position where I work with people from a diverse industry setup. And in this diverse industry setup, I can be certain that some skills are more important and more relevant than others. For example, in my time, we spent a lot of time learning foreign languages. I picked up German because of that. I started learning Mandarin because of that. But now, because of the fast interpreters, translators, and tools, that skill becomes completely redundant. So I think the first skill that you need to pick up, no matter which industry you are from, is the skill of coding and the skill of learning up emerging technologies. Technology now is becoming redundant. Earlier, it used to happen once in a decade, but now it's happening super often. And therefore, you need to keep a track of all emerging technologies, and maybe not on a expert level, but on a basic level, you need to be able to apply it. So I have a four found test for this actually, that if you can make any business cashless, if you can make any business contactless, if you can make any businesses tracking better, the key performance tracking better, if you can make any business collaborate better, and you can automate the collaboration, I think you will have a minimum of $1 billion market, which is amazing. So the first step is learning coding and emerging technologies. The second skill I would say, which will be very important, is in terms of your communication skill, in terms of articulating your technical competence. We all know that person who is dumber than us but does better than us because of better communication skills, and it's very painful. So I would request you, as we work from home, as we collaborate from different geographies, our written and our oral communication skills will be exceptionally powerful. As the world shrinks and as we get into calls with people from different nationalities, different upbringings, different cultures, the ability to understand these softer factors will become exceptionally important. The third is, and this is something that most of engineering colleges, and rather most of the colleges miss, is the skill of commercial smartness. No matter how good you are technically, if you are not able to commercially negotiate, if you are not able to commercially understand the terms, you will be in for a very difficult ride where people will take undue advantage of your ignorance, and that's not good in the long run. After commercial smartness, the fourth is, and this is going to be the most important skill, is getting along and working with diverse teams. Like I said, geography is becoming redundant every day. Where people are working from is becoming redundant. And for anything big to achieve, there are to be a large number of people working in unison. And therefore, we do not need superstars, we need super teams. And super teams cannot be possible where all of you are not able to work in teams properly. And after getting along, the skill I think which is most important is about thin slicing opportunities. Gone are the times where you joined a company and you decided to stay with the company for 5 years, 10 years. The companies are evolving very fast and the companies are dying very fast. Companies are changing very fast. So if you are not able to see where your industry is going, where your company is going, where the clients of your companies are going, is going to be a tough ride. You will be fired. For example, I'll give you two of my friends who were at a mid-level and senior position at large IT companies got sacked recently. They had a pay of 3 lakh rupees a month, and while they were sacked, it was simply because their role was not into execution nor into decision making. Their role was purely supervisory, and now they have tools which help them supervise most of the work. So their job really became redundant because you cannot fight with technology, right? Technology, it doesn't get sick, it's not emotional, it can work just continuously for a long time. So better than making technology your competitor, make it your collaborator, and try to see these opportunities and try to grab onto them at the right time. Otherwise, you're in for a hard time. And the last, I would say, the skill that we need to build is the skill of doing, uh, good research. Research is not googling and seeing what comes on the first page of the results, but research is going to the depth of the matter and having the patience to see the source of anything. This does not just applies to our news but applies to everything. I mean, no matter which field you are in, the ability to go in depth and find out where the actually meat lies and where it really comes from is extremely important. Now, I think with this background, I want to move towards being a little more productive, on a personal level. And I have always said this in all the seminars I've been talking at, is most of the people have a very gloomy picture about the lockdown. They have lost jobs, and people have died en masse. It's become a statistic.
But how do you be productive? Because in my case, since I work with people who are inventing things and inventing products and writing computer applications, I've got more work after the lockdown than before the lockdown. And the reason was very simple. People were able to utilize this free time they got and the free time they got from their jobs to actually work on their passions, to work on those ideas which were kept on the back burner, and to work on those ideas which they felt are the most pressing. And therefore, let me now share some tips on how to make sure your ideas can really come to on an impact level. So the first step I usually I mean, breaking it down into 5 steps. The first step you need to do whenever you get an idea, and the idea can be, your frustration, a problem you're dealing with. It can be any of this. So the first step is expressing the idea, and when you express it, you need to answer basically 2 questions: what is the idea, and how does it work? And when I say express it, it's not a layman expression. You need to express it in terms of technology terms. So if you have developed, say, a foot operated or a sensor based hand sanitizer, we know what it does, but how does it work needs to be explained. And in the intellectual property offices, we have all these judges and legal officers who do not understand technology very nicely, and therefore we need to explain it in very simple layman terms. So what and how it works. And here I want to also make a point that whatever idea you come with, do not be very public with it. Do not be very generous in sharing the information till at least you file it provisionally, because loss of an idea or publication of an idea on even social media can avoid the registration of it properly. So that's my first point to you: express it. Now the second point, which I think is the litmus test, and is, I think, according to me, the most important point, is the point of search, a novelty search. Because see, intellectual property is not for innovations, it's for inventions. You cannot improve upon something and get an intellectual property for it. You need to invent something from zero. And for that, when we search something, it has to be substantially original. How do we search? Whatever you have expressed, we will upload that into the database, and the database will give us a overlap comparison. If your invention is more than 75% original, you will get the intellectual property. You can file. If it is less than that, you can do a little bit modifications here and there. But if it is less than even 40% or 30%, my recommendation is to for you to drop it. And when you are searching, it's very important to search in the right jurisdictions. To give you an example, see, one of my clients has developed a fairness screen, for example. So the right jurisdiction is important in terms of where the registration would make sense. So if you go for a US, UK, Russia kind of a registration, it absolutely won't serve the purpose. Similarly, if you come out with a product innovation, a mechanical product, a device, and you don't protect that in countries which have a strong manufacturing base like China, I think you have made a very stupid move. Similarly, ideas also need to be chosen. Suppose you've come out with a mobile application or a technology product, you really need to file it across the world, because technology again is geography agnostic. It can work anywhere the same problem persists. So the search is, I would say, the litmus test for you to go ahead and for you to be certified as an inventor. Once the search is done, the next point I would recommend all of you to pursue is to go for a provisional registration. Now, registration has 2 levels: provisional and final. On a provisional level, what you are doing is your idea is fully not formed. The prototype is not made, the sample is not done. So on a provisional level, you only have the idea on paper. And the best part is the IP offices allow you to register something provisionally. The reason why we register things provisionally is the IP office works on a first come first serve basis. So if you invent something but somebody else beats you to it, you lose the you completely lose the inventor title and the right to go for an IP. So I would say you need to have some level of urgency when you're in the space of intellectual property rights. So when you file a provisional registration, which is a registration on paper, the government gives you a time of 1 year to either create a prototype or to sell it to somebody who wants to create. Now this is interesting. Now you would think that an idea has a value only after you create a prototype or only after you create a something out of it or execute it. But in our space is what I have learned is an idea even on paper when it is registered has a value of its own, and it has massive value. I'll give you a few examples. I have clients who keep traveling, who keep exploring business models, and their route is very simple. They will come back, they will search, and if the idea is available in India to register, they will register it. And again, they never intend to make it. They they will just sell it to a person who's from that industry who wants to pursue it. So this can be an excellent model. We have seen this earlier in domain names. It's called domain name squatting, where people took good domain names and sat with it just to sell it to the right person at the right time. A good example here is of the Alibaba.com domain name, where the Canadian student had bought it for about $3 to $4 and then sold it to Jack Ma for crores in Indian rupees. So it works on a similar level. So once you create the prototype and you actually make the sample or the beta version, you are almost done in terms of most of your work is absolutely done. And in some cases it always happens. To give you an example, I had a student from Nasik who created a bag, right? A bag which was very well designed. It used to curve with your spine, and he was from a poor family. He did not have the funds to set up manufacturing. He did not have the funds to market it, to distribute it. So what we did was, I told him, first things first, let's patent this. We patented this for him, and it got published in the journal for people to object to it. The best part was, as soon as it got published, it was an international patent, of course, we got calls from bag manufacturers. And the bag manufacturer said, see, Vivek, we have the production capacity, we have the distribution network, we have the marketing funds, we already have a network. Why don't you license us the design, and we will pay you a small percentage of your our sales? And it was a great deal for Vivek, because as it is, he did not have money. And the deal we did that day was with a company called Wildcraft. You must be knowing and very familiar with Wildcraft. The company sells close to 5 to 6,000 bags every month at an average price of 1,500 per bag on a lower scale. So if you do the math, 5,000 into 1,500 into 12% is what they are paying as license fee. Vivek is doing very well now. Similarly, I remember another client of mine who created a very good solution for these airport bags. So whenever you're doing air travel, you will notice once you land, the collection of your bag is a exercise in frustration. And one of my clients, traveling with his grandfather, got into a fight and fell, and he had a spine issue, got operated. And Sanket, who's my client, who was just 20 at that point, he thought that we need to do something about this, and he created a very beautiful sticker, which was a Bluetooth and an NFC enabled sticker, and he put it on the bag. And the job of the sticker was very simple, that once it comes within a certain distance of yours, say a meter, 1 meter or 2 meters, it sent you a message that come pick me up. So it was amazing to see that. Just I saw messages again. Is my voice still an issue?
So
Okay,
you're clearly audible, sir.
okay. No, I saw some messages, that is why. So he created that sticker, and his problem solving was very simple. Whenever you are waiting to collect your bag, do not be anxious or fight it out or be all this nervous. You read a book, you listen to music, you talk to your friends. As the bag will come close, it will send you the message, or it will call you, it will give you a missed call. And this was such a simple idea executed for his grandfather. What happened beautifully was, As the idea was published in the journal, couple of airlines came and reached out to us. The deal was finally done with Etihad Airways. Etihad is UAE's national carrier, and it's unlike Air India, it's doing very well for itself. What it did was they gave us 50 paisa per sticker for using the technology. Now you will wonder, why am I sharing this example? Is 50 paisa per bag? It has no meaning. But when you understand the numbers in terms of Etihad ferrying close to 12 lakh passengers every day, and every passenger having 3 bags minimum, so if you do that, 12 lakhs into 3 bags into 50 paisa, it becomes a great amount. So you can see small ideas and small solutions with existing technologies combined beautifully can yield fantastic results. And I mean, I can give you, I mean, many more examples, because this is, I take a 30-hour course on intellectual property, on how can idea can be taken to an impactful stage. But with that background, let me open it up to questions, and so that the discussion is more relating to what you want rather than what I want to share. So we can maybe open it, and you can ask me questions by unmuting yourself, or maybe by putting it on chat.
Dear participants, please post your queries in the chat box. Thank you.
So one point I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention earlier, is it is even not necessary that you come out with a new invention, because intellectual property works as, you know, on a class basis. So a footwear class is different from a water class. So to give you an example, we all know about Book My Show, right? All of us know Book My Show. We've used it. We love the app. But have you heard of Book My Parking? So another client of us who's into the field of, technology, he created an app called Mark and Park. So just like you book your theater seat, you can book your parking spot before you leave your house. Today he's in Pune, he's in Bangalore. He caters to around 120 parking spots with more than 1500 parking spaces, and he charges 10 rupees per transaction. So it's amazing to see how an idea from a different industry was applied to the parking space idea. So sometimes you can just keep your eyes open and just pick it up from here and there. Are there any questions? I could see some chats while I was talking.
So students are posting the questions, sir. Bottom three are the questions actually. Can you please check it out?
Yeah, hello. I was not able to unmute myself. Sorry about that. Yeah, if you can ask me your questions, let me see. There were a few in the chat. Okay. First question was, you need to understand the process of how these patents or copyrights or trademarks are filed. So the processes are more or less the same. I'll give you, a background of what the process is, what are the steps, what is the cost, everything. So the first step in any process, like I told you, is of searching whether your idea is original enough, whether it is an invention. If the search is positive, then the next step is you file for a provisional application, be it a copyright or a patent. So you just need your idea on paper, not a prototype. Once you file a provisional application, the registrar will publish it in the journal so that objections will be raised. So people in the general will object to your invention. They will say, okay, this is very similar to mine. So you have to reply to these objections. Sometimes the registrar himself will raise objections. So you have to reply to that also. Once you reply to the objections and once you satisfy the registrar, then the patent is granted to you. Now this entire process of these four steps takes about minimum 1 year. But the protection starts from the moment you file the application. So even though the patent is, if you file today and the patent is granted, suppose next year in January, the protection will start as on today. So it is a retrospective protection is something that you get. And now coming to the cost and how does internationally and nationally is different. So in India, if you see, the actual government fee of filing a patent application is very less. It's just 1500 to 2000 rupees. But in terms of the lawyer's drafting fee and the other fees, if you combine, in India, a typical product patent will go up to 25 to 30,000 rupees, and a process patent will go up to say 50. Internationally, it will be multiplied by 3 purely because of the exchange rate. As the exchange rates and the currency changes, the cost changes. So that was your answer to the cost and the time. So the other question was, how do you know whether your idea is something that is good enough, that you should work on, that you should put money, you should invest? My answer to you is, it should be positive in the search report. Sometimes what happens is the idea is 50 to 55% or 60% original. In such cases, what I recommend is you can draft the application in such a way and you can use such keywords so as to circumvent the search and to still be positive more than 75. So there are tricks and tips on how to do the search properly in order to you to be as original as possible. So that is why I think involving a patent attorney is a little important, especially if your invention is of a great commercial value. And I'm sure most of engineering colleges now have an IP cell, an IPR cell, where right from ideation to commercialization, there is somebody who's doing this handover. And in some cases, I've seen, for example, in IIT Bombay, I've seen, in some of the private colleges, I've seen that colleges give an NOC to their students saying that whatever you create while being a student of the university will be completely yours. We as a university will not claim a stake in your invention. So I think that's something that's amazing. I see that's a very different from our culture. Otherwise, earlier colleges will always take credit, and professors also wanted to be like a co-inventor. So that is something that's gone now. So that's a positive step. Let me check for other questions. Yeah, one question I missed was, how did Ola copy Uber's idea? Now you have to understand this. Both of these do not, enjoy any legal monopoly per se, and that is why, just like we have a lot of copycat kind of businesses, right? Flipkart is a copy of Amazon and Oyo is a copy of Airbnb. Now the point here I wanted to make is, if Uber first of all had an original algorithm and had a source code that was strong enough and had filed an international patent at that moment, we would have not had all these copycats and all these local Uber companies like Ola. So if you go to the UAE, there's a different version. If you in Brazil, there is a different version. In China, there is a different version. So that's number one. So when you start a business, nobody thinks that the business will go global. And Uber also had filed a patent application, but it was only for North America, the main 30 odd states. And therefore, a lot of people just copied the idea in their home countries. And since it was available, they registered it. So yeah, sometimes that also happens. So these are the perks of traveling abroad and keeping a check on international trends. So this is something that's very common in the startup industry, that people will keep a track of which company is getting funded in which industry and start a similar company without doing their own research or without doing basic customer profiling of from their side. So it's pretty common, more common than you think. Yeah, somebody's asked a good question. What is the maturity period? Now, sadly, there is no maturity period, but there is a tenure for each kind of intellectual property right that differs according to the nature and scope of the invention. For example, the mobile phones that or the computers that we are using, the technology gets outdated so fast that patents enjoy the lowest kind of tenure, right, of 10 years or so, and you can renew them for another 10 years. Now, trademarks will become public or will lose their protection in 10 years. Copyrights, on the other hand, which are like books and films and music, they last for 60 years after the death of the author. Because please understand that paintings and books, the life, they will not become redundant in 5 years or 10 years. You and I will still read Charles Dickens and Agatha Christie. Maybe our grandchildren will also read. So, based on the type of invention and the type of its life and how long it is relevant, it's somehow holds, and there are different terms for each copyright. Of course, some of them are renewable, and you should renew them before they expire. I mean, commonsensical. And the Copyright Office allows you that 1 month before the renewal, you can file the application and do the renewal process. So, one repeated question I am seeing is, what is the federal process of registration? So it's not difficult, guys. I think there is a lot of fear around IP in general, that it is very expensive, that it's very difficult, and that's not the case. I think because of few people in this space practicing, they're able to charge premiums. At the same time, the literacy around IP is not there, unfortunately, not even in engineering colleges, where I think it should be a mandatory subject. But yeah, I think because of ignorance, there are some people who are profiting, there are some people who are charging a premium. I can confidently say that once you do this process once, the entire process once, you can guide all your juniors, you can create your own consultancy within your college or within your area. So I think it's just a matter of doing it once without fear, just as a learning experience. And it is sad, I mean, if you go and see the best institutes, the IITs and NITs and all these so-called best institutes, it is so, I mean, they have more than 100 patents filed, but when you see their granting statistics, it's very poor. It is in single digits. So last year, for example, one of the very renowned IITs, IIT Kharagpur, had filed hundreds of patents, but 8 or 9 were granted. And I think for an institute of which is so old, which is so reputed, the numbers are very bad. I had more patent applications granted than say IIT Kharagpur. So I think this culture building will take some time. Yeah, good question. Somebody said, can you sue somebody if they copy your invention? So the obvious answer is yes. That's why we are discussing this. That's why the law is made. See, because when a person, suppose you come out with a drug for coronavirus, of course you have spent a lot of money in research, you have spent a lot of money on scientist salaries, you have spent a lot of money on clinical trials, you've spent a lot of money on marketing the drug to make sure the drug reaches every pharmacy. And as an inventor, when you put so much of money and time and resources and effort, you need to recover this. And intellectual property registration is nothing but the legal monopoly for a few years so that you can recover it. So, of course, yes, if your provisional patent is filed or if your patent is granted, you can send a notice. At the same time, let me make one more thing clear, is just because you have a patent granted does not mean that money will start flowing into your bank account. You need to be alert. You need to be tracking people who are using your product or a service. And once you are tracking that, okay, these people have used it without my consent, at that moment you can send them a notice and ask them for uh, money. And therefore, it's very important that people infringe your intellectual property. If there are no infringers, there is no commercial value. So somebody has said, what if the patent backfires? I didn't understand this. Can you unmute and give me an example? Maybe I can advise you better. I think if there are more questions, the organizers have my email ID. I always happily respond to students, and we have a policy of not charging, say, professional fees to people who are under 25. So if you are under 25 and you want to go ahead with something like this, we will be more than happy to assist you. I think we can close with that.